Hi, welcome to the September 28th meeting, supplemental meeting of the CNCF IoT Edge Working Group. This meeting is intended to discuss the draft of the white paper that we've been working on for some number of weeks now. So with no further ado, let's get started. A few people, Amar and Dion, have had quite a few edits, comments, new material added to the document. So does one of you want to go first?
So I think Amar, you were doing a lot of restructuring of things, so maybe we can go to that first, and then my section is just one concentrated thing, so we can do that later.
Okay, I can share my screen.
I just dropped the document link in the chat if anybody needed that.
Okay. So most of my edits were restructuring. I did have a couple of sort of content questions, and I'll go through them. So the first one I thought was edge computing is a paradigm which brings data processing closer to the source. For example, sensors in vehicles. So I had 2 points on this one. One is data processing closer to the source has been there since, ever since computing has been there. So do we need to add additional qualification? Like, for example, by utilizing cloud computing, like automation, et cetera, something that qualifies it a little bit more than just saying data processing closer to the source. And the second one I thought is we had explicitly sort of in terms of scope, we had said we are not going to the sensors. So would we be better served with a different example, like radiology image processing in a hospital or video analytics on a factory floor, something like that. So those were my 2 comments on the beginning.
I like the sentence as it is, but no objection to changing the example at all.
Yeah,
I don't want it to get a whole lot longer than it is though now. But if you want to switch the example from vehicles to medical, I think anything that would be in the realm of edge is fine with me. If somebody just wants to propose something like you just did, like medical, I'd say just go ahead and let's do it now and close it unless somebody has an objection.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think the reason why I also think sensors in vehicles is fine is because we agreed that sensors isn't in scope, but the compute that's using the sensors is. So in this case, the vehicle to me would be the compute. So whatever nodes or servers you have in the vehicle. But I agree that that might not be clear to the reader. And so using, well, radiology imaging, is that what we're saying is the central compute? I'm not sure, but it makes sense that a hospital would have a server more to the average reader than a vehicle would. So I can understand that change.
Yeah, the only thing I have with radiology is I think, and I've certainly heard of cases where those, because you don't need that low latency response to the radiology unless it's a situation. There are some where the radiology is being used live during surgery to guide some instrument that's being directed down a blood vessel. But I think many instances of radiology, like looking for cancer from static images, by no means have that latency dependency. So they're often collected and processed in batch.
How about
that's maybe not the best example. Yeah, robot control, fine. That's better.
That's I think it's Okay.
Okay, so that's good. Let's just, instead of
this.
leaving it as a comment, I think if you do the check mark, it'll close it right out and just make the edit and make it look normal black and white text.
And so this, what's the sort of consensus? Just leave it as is, data processing closer to the source? I think that's okay too.
It's fine with me.
Yeah. What do others feel? Yeah, okay, let's just leave it.
Yeah, unless somebody has something better. I mean, the argument against would be that, Hadoop was sort of the same thing that really had nothing to do with Edge. Well, you could use Hadoop in an Edge situation, I suppose, but I can't come up with anything better, at least in the short term. If I had an hour more to think about it, maybe I could, but I don't have the hour.
My only question, is there a difference between Edge and Edge native? Is Edge native the adjective for Edge? I just want to clarify that, because I could see someone saying Edge is anything, any compute you throw near data, but Edge native is compute you throw near data that has cloud native principles as well.
I think what we have to go with here is, to use an analogy, there's cloud and then cloud native. So cloud was was a noun of compute resource that was a useful tool. And cloud native was structure around how do you use that effectively, efficiently with best practices, and map running workloads onto the cloud resource. So I think Edge native is about the big picture of not just, some physical compute resource, but Edge native are these principles of how you best utilize them, best design them. Don't know if that is overkill on the question you just asked, but
No, I think that's good.
But in my mind, it's more the question of, like, is it just an on-prem compute, or is it edge computing? So to me, that's the big difference. That for the edge, we are trying to what we discussed in the previous sections, that we want to be to use cloud native like technologies to automate workloads running closer to the data source, right?
I mean, I see the point as well. I mean, I'm okay leaving it because it might be too much of a nuanced point, but just because you have data processing closer to the source doesn't make it edge computing, right? We've had data processing closer to the source since the 80s, but the 80s architecture, 90s architecture would not be called edge computing. It just be called on-prem computing. So what is the difference between on-prem computing and edge computing, I guess, is the question in my mind. And do we need to address it right at the beginning, or we just, because the rest of the paper does address that. So very, very first sentence, we could sort of leave it.
Yeah, if you wanted to say source, I think if you wanted to embellish it, because you're right, there are things that aren't edge that would fit under that definition, but it's the source of what. And the what, I would contend, is events and original data generation. A Hadoop often is going to process as a batch data that was collected and moved from elsewhere, yet the compute is near where the data is now. But Edge is about moving the data processing close to the original point of origin for data. And it isn't just data, but I would contend events, because in something like that robotic control, there are edge triggers or events that they're hard to characterize as data, other than the fact that some event happened and it was detected. It starts getting long if you extend it like that, but if we were to edit this, I think the edit would be to call out the source of what. And I think the what is events and data. And it's original data rather than copies of data.
So I was thinking slightly differently. In my mind, edge computing is data processing closer to the source using cloud computing like principles. So I had sort of assumed, or in my mind, that because you do have, I don't know, what are those things called? Those there's a lot of compute that's closer to the source, but we wouldn't call it edge computing. I mean, I'm sure factories have all kinds of pneumatic machines and what are those? I forget what they're called. Computer-driven machines and things like that, but you
Like
would not call
CNC
them
mills, things like
yeah,
that.
CNC mills and stuff. You would not
Or
call that edge
you even
computing.
have things. The world is moving to smarter cameras that maybe have image classification that is literally moved into the camera itself.
Right.
I would still actually call that edge computing. Now, it might not be edge computing in the sense that the CNCF is going to be able to wrap around a large amount of infrastructure on that, but I think that that actually is edge computing. It's just sort of edge computing packaged into modules so that you're running it on a different tier.
So then why don't we just leave it? This is non-controversial.
Okay.
I think any qualification we'll do, we make will potentially become controversial.
And I don't think anybody is going to skim read this and say, hey,
No.
that's flat out wrong. So yeah, let's just leave it.
Then moving on, growth at 40%. I think we need a source. I don't know who put it, but if you could add the source, I think that'd be good. The rest is a lot of language cleanup. I mean, I won't go through it. I think people can just go through it. Yeah, some word. I think this someone who meant downstream, not upstream, because upstream is showed up 2 times. And instead of enabled, I thought uninterrupted might be better. So maybe, I mean, we don't need to do this here, right? People can do it offline, just language edits and minor tweaks.
I think that last bullet, it would be good to just do right now. What are we looking for there?
Do we even know who did this section? Because I don't. Hopefully it isn't me and I'm just blank.
I believe it was Natalie, because I think I remember her saying she was going to take on the What is Edge. Natalie, are you on the call? Yeah, I don't think she's here today, but I'll look back at Slack, but I believe she mentioned she took that on.
So I
remember same thought. I think it was Natalie.
Natalie, okay.
Okay, let's ask her to see if she can reduce it. It's just coming to me now, but I think that this might be too wordy to even separately call out upstream and downstream bandwidth, for example, that it's getting into maybe excessive.
Just handling high bandwidth.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Should we just do that?
Sure.
Oops. So like managing
bandwidth in general, I think would be.
How about that?
Yeah, good. And then, yeah, delete that.
Okay, so I'll and I think this just sounded awkward. Enabled operations even when networks are disrupted. I think maybe uninterrupted is better.
You know, if you changed managing bandwidth to managing reduced and intermittent bandwidth, it would cover the disrupted case, and you could even delete this line.
Managing bandwidth doesn't fit with the leading sentence. So companies are seeing the following benefits of having computing power at the edge.
Bandwidth management.
Yeah, actually, I'd agree that the computing power at the edge is orthogonal to bandwidth management.
Actually, it has 2 purposes, right? So when you have, if you're in a stadium and you have, that's a very common, or it was a very popular edge computing use case 2-3 years ago, and you have hundreds of cameras, then you have tremendous downstream bandwidth, which cannot be served from the cloud. So therefore you needed edge computing to aggregate all these camera streams, and then viewers in the stadium could choose any camera angle. So they could, like, if there's a soccer goal, penalty being goal, they could like watch it from the striker's point of view. So there were all, so that's one bandwidth use case. The other one is reducing upstream bandwidth. So again, a very popular, so for example, the radiology one, which we removed, but it's also a popular example for edge computing, because you'd have to send, I forget how many petabytes, but per hospital, you'd have to send X number of petabytes per day if you wanted to process that radiology information in the cloud. So reducing, and same thing with video surveillance camera, you want to process that machine learning inferencing on the on-premise and the factory or whatever. So I think, yeah, I think it's okay. I think it is relevant for edge computing, and
Okay.
qualifying it more would be, then we'd have to use a lot of words. I think bandwidth management is good enough, I think.
Yeah, especially if this section is just what is edge. We don't need to go into the detail later. That can be addressed further on down. Okay, I'm good with that.
So uninterrupted is okay. Maybe we can reduce the number of words. Uninterrupted operations with unreliable networks or something.
Okay. Enable operation
good.
with reliable networks. I like that.
Uninterrupted? You guys okay with uninterrupted? I just don't, I
Yeah.
find the word enable awkward.
Looks good.
Okay. Yeah, and then this was just language edits. So I think it was kind of left ... meaning it would be filled up later. So I just tried to fill it up. And I put the LF Edge image, assuming we want to use that same classification. So is this okay?
Yeah, I'm not able to come up with something better, so let's just say it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I proposed, I think I had a comment there. I'm not sure. But oh yeah, a little farther down. I think this would be a great opportunity to elaborate on what are the different types of edge. So we've talked about geo-based, resource-based, network-based, and I think just saying that there are these three categories and we're choosing to focus on geo-based.
Ah, okay. This one, right?
Yeah. I think it would add maybe a sentence, but kind of provide more context that hasn't been provided elsewhere. Like I think when you mentioned that, Steve, a while ago, it was quite helpful to me personally to understand that those are three kind of lenses that we've seen, and I haven't seen another paper cite the three lenses.
How about if we leave it to call out the other two that we're not using here? I mean, we're just pointing out that for the purpose of this paper, we have to choose one. So we're choosing geo, but the other lenses exist. But
should we add it as a footnote?
Oh, I think if it's possible to just put it down in one sentence or two, we could just leave it right here. If you want to assign that to somebody, that would be good. Either me or Kate, unless there's another volunteer.
I can do it just as the reply will remind me.
Okay. And then, yeah, I just put a transition sentence to say that we are now going to talk about similarities and differences.
That looks good to me.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, consider it approved.
Hey,
Oh,
you're doing it.
Joel?
No, he just did it. There was the A.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just.
And then again, I put a header statement to give a little bit of context on what this code is. So hopefully, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I removed this because I already kind of covered it here.
All right.
So another header sentence, just saying this is similarities. Looks okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
Yeah, the
So-
portability one looks good to me.
Looks good. Portability.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the definition side, I was a little confused by the, in addition, they can be implemented in a variety of languages. To me, that's a different category than portability.
I think what I'd done is I tried to collapse two similarities, but if they're distinct, then we can leave it. I think it was this one, agnostic language and framework support.
Yeah, I like keeping those separate just because to me it's easier to just read the attributes. If I'm skimming something, I'll just read the shorter column and get a gist of it. And if it takes up as much space to put that sentence in another
Okay.
row, I see that as better. But
Yeah, and I agree with Kate's comment that it really isn't, it's not the same as portability, so it doesn't feel like it belongs here.
Okay. So this is okay, this so far?
Let me read
There
it
is a
again.
comment here from Tomaya.
I'm sorry, are you sharing something? I don't see your screen.
Do others see my screen?
yeah,
I see the screen.
Yeah.
if you have the document pulled up, Tamaya, on your computer.
Okay, got it. I'm gonna do that.
We're at
Yeah.
the similarities in the edge native to cloud native.
I think the comment was,
Yeah, the comment was that they might very much care about the location, which is true. But then you edited it to say platform instead of location. So I think that you kind of addressed that comment in my mind.
yeah, I think there's a nuance. I think the applications and services have to be written in a location independent manner, and then they can be deployed in a location dependent manner, but that's splitting hairs. So I think it's safe to just remove locations.
Yeah, especially with platforms there.
Yeah.
I'd agree with you.
Yeah, so I was thinking the same thing. I mean, like, is this the responsibility for the application or system or platform? So if we remove the location, I'm good to go.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the location thing is actually covered, I think, down below in the orchestration under Edge native, where it calls out the fact that the orchestration has to be location aware. So I think we've got that covered.
So actually, we have the use case that using Kubernetes, or like we want to deploy the application based on the location. So I think it should be, at the moment, I was thinking, like the location data should be taken care of by Kubernetes and redeploy the application once the location data changes. So that was the use case. So yeah.
Agreed. So let's remove it from here. So so I'm going to accept all of this.
Right, sounds good.
This is not showing up.
looks good.
Okay, so interfaces and tooling options are provided to manage apps and resources at a large scale. So I think it was just a comment. I think we can resolve it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
And then I tried to combine manageable and connectivity management. But again, if they're distinct points, excuse me, then we don't have to collapse them. Because manageable and connectivity management, or we should come up with a different description. They seem similar.
Yeah,
think
they're
one is-
managing two different things, but I think combining them into one box is okay with me. They are
Yeah, I
both
think-
management.
Yeah, that's what I thought. They're both management.
I'm pro merging as well.
Yeah, okay, let's merge.
Okay, so this we said, so let me reject these. Agnostic language and framework support. Yeah, I think that's okay, right?
Yeah. Okay, good. It looks like we're done with the table.
So now differences, I just put a header statement.
Looks good.
I just added a nitty comment on how to make the first sentence not as quite as long.
How about even though the broad mission shares similarities, then you can eliminate that whole part and the fact that they share similarities. It just makes it a little tighter.
The broad mission is the same between.
Say the broad mission shares similarities.
Between Edge. Maybe this adjust is also redundant. How about that?
Yeah, and here, instead of between, we can say of, and it makes it smaller.
Yeah, yeah.
Oops.
Okay, everybody okay with this, except?
Yep.
Yeah, good.
This is nitty, but do we want to have the call to action at the end of that? Developers need to be aware of the differences and adjust their applications accordingly. I think you had something along those lines.
Yeah. I mean, this is good enough. I mean, if they are aware of the differences, they need to.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
sounds
think
good.
it's, yeah. Okay, app model. So maybe this is more for you, Brandon. Some of the sentences are complete, some are not. So there's a little bit of a lack of consistency in the way these sentences are written. I don't know, maybe it's okay, I don't know.
Suggest we do a cleanup for tense, just make them all consistent.
Okay, maybe we can do that later, yeah. We can do
Yeah,
a proofread and edit.
I can help with that part. Yep.
Okay. So are we saying that edge apps are more stateful than cloud? Also, what does regional mean here? Regional is E, intended to mean an application is multi-tiered, joining a collection of leaf nodes.
Well, I think that stateful call out is that in, the traditional public cloud hosted, you had horizontal scale out with a lower tier, like a database or something,
Yeah.
used by a bunch of stateless horizontal components. But when you go to edge, first of all, if you don't have a cluster scaling horizontally, maybe isn't even an option anymore. And once you remove that horizontal scale out, often you'll see that people just combine the state. You know, if you don't have cluster nodes and you just have one, it can be a simpler architecture to just go put the state in the one thing that uses that state rather than break it into two independent pieces. So you tend to see more common use of stateful apps, I would contend, at edge locations that are, well, monolithic. So I think I probably wrote this cell, but that's
I modified it. I modified it. So how about in both cases, the separation?
Yeah,
between
if this is the
state
modified form, I have no objection to it as it looks now. So, but we're just trying to amplify what the intent was.
Instead of a regional edge, let's say service provider edge then to match our diagram at the top when we're defining edge.
Or how about just take out the word regional and just call it edge app?
Okay. Because aren't you distinguishing there between the two different types of edge apps?
Yeah, service provider. Yeah. I think if you want to be consistent. And is it better to say in both cases, the separation between state or something, instead of saying they're more stateful, they're not more stateful. What's happening is the separation of state is not as clean, or
yeah, I think it's a situation. This gets pretty wordy for putting in a box of a cell, but you can't as easily outsource the state and make it somebody else's problem or the service provider's problem. You kind of have to own it and worry about deploying stateful apps more at edge than you do in public cloud.
So how about in both cases, the state?
Maybe state is more locally cached. I don't know if we want to, because it seems like we're talking about where the state lives.
May not be. How about
state may be co-located with the app?
Yeah, that sounds good.
With the app, co-located with the app. Looks okay. Okay, I'll accept it. Everybody okay with that?
All right. If it's imperfect, somebody can come back later, but let's at least move it in the right direction.
Yeah, it looks good. And trying to think through how to simplify it. Cloud native is microservice, stateless, edge native, monolithic, stateful.
At least those are trends. Let's just not say it's black and white, right? They shift in that direction.
Right. Yeah, but just I was trying to boil it down to make it smaller.
Yeah,
but it's good for now.
We made an improvement, and if somebody wants to come back and revisit it, but let's leave it for now and move on.
So this one, my only point, if we bring up network connectivity here, we need to do so in the next year. So in the original one, there was a discussion of network here, excellent network interconnects.
Mm-hmm.
It was absent here, so I just put that in. So I think I just put this language in. With connectivity that may range from excellent to poor to intermittent.
All right, it looks okay.
Yeah, so here my question was, is it just elasticity or is it elasticity and scalability? because we do use the word scaling, scaling might be vertical up to the connected cloud, or is it just elasticity?
I'm happy with calling them both out, especially since, we have a lot of white space in that cell, so it doesn't really take up any more room in the document. So I've got no objection to adding scalability there.
Yeah, and it emphasized the problem, right? So
yeah,
it's good.
Okay.
Is scale also worth calling out here? Maybe it's in the actual paragraph where cloud native, it's inherently the horizontal is lots of processes. Scale for edge might be additional sites. It's not just processes within one single compute cluster or node. It might be 100 sites versus 100 processes.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to put it in this cell. I think that in terms of,
Okay.
if you had an edge with a bunch of leaf nodes, my observation is I haven't come across that many use cases where they actually attempt to scale to another leaf node as opposed to going up to a higher tier.
Yeah,
the leaf nodes already are.
Yeah, what I'm starting, Steve, I'm not talking about an edge has lots of leaves. I'm saying you might have a lot of edge things that are geographically distributed, if that makes sense.
Like more zones.
Like, hey, yeah, I might have 1,000 sensors that are distributed as an example. As opposed to, it's not like it's an edge site that has lots of leaves. I just have way more sites.
Well, one thing we didn't call out that I would agree probably is an issue, but I don't think it's in any cells right now, is that I think the scale is potentially bigger. If you look at Kubernetes, it really has an architecture that is capped at about 5,000 nodes. But pretty clearly, there are edge deployments that are way above 5,000 edge nodes. And that is a difference. Yeah. And it isn't covered by anything currently in this cell. But I don't know that there, if we wanted to follow up on the difference in that table on what the recommendation or tool set is to do with that, there maybe aren't even any great solutions out there yet to manage that higher scale. But what you want to call out is that the order of magnitude of scale is different at edge. That would be a valid call out, but I think this elasticity and scalability is more about the elasticity and scalability of the compute resource as opposed to the number of nodes being managed. So their scale is different in those two contexts.
Yeah, and the very end is what I was trying to say, Steve. I have a lot more in that, so we're good. Sorry, more.
I mean, we could try to build in scale and.
Well, I think scalability of when you added scalability here, you meant scalability of the compute resource available. Yeah. But as soon as you put the word scale, people might think that you're bringing in the edge node count. So there's a risk there, and that's not really what we're trying to talk about in this particular row of the table.
Then let's remove the word.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, I get the point. That helped clarify it for me, Steve. Thank you.
And if we want to add another row, just call it scale.
Right.
We could.
And maybe not just scale, because we've just seen that also has a double meaning, but maybe something like compute participants, or I don't know, like number of devices, something along the lines, and we can add a to-do there. Maybe someone takes that on of like, how do we define that the number of members of this cluster? So it could be like, it is larger potentially and more geographically spread.
Okay, well, at least the elasticity row, I think we've got covered. So maybe we should keep moving along here in the interest of time and go down to the next open one. if somebody has a good idea for covering scale in this table, go for it, but we won't try to like groupthink this right now.
Okay, so I just put a comment that we need to add one more row.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and then these were not really sentences. They were more like fragments of thoughts. So I just tried to make it into sentences. So hardware, instead of hardware / infrastructure, yeah, placement awareness. And there was this point about lower extraction, long replacement cycles, but I wasn't sure a developer can, it's actionable. So I wasn't sure. I don't know who put this. Maybe they can comment,
Yeah,
or maybe we can.
I was the one who put this,
Okay.
this row in, and the longer replacement cycles just call out more need for, or more value to abstraction layers, so that you know, you can reduce your exposure to these differences that happen over time.
Okay.
You know, in a public cloud, the cloud provider usually just a lot of it is economics. That is, the CPU makers come up with more efficient chips. By the time stuff is 3 and 5 years old, even if it works perfectly well, it's often thrown out anyway, just because the newer stuff has more compute per watt, and it's just cheaper to ditch it and move on. So things tends to stay more consistent. You're only dealing with, you know, a 3 to 5 year span of hardware life cycle stuff out there. But when you get to edge, people still, it's an anomaly, but there's people using 20-year-old stuff, and 10-year-old stuff isn't uncommon. And it creates all kinds of variances in what the underlying compute looks like in terms of, you know, generations of GPUs or total lack of GPUs, support for AES encryption and things in the hardware. I don't know. Maybe it was too much amplification for a table entry, but that's what I was getting at with the replacement cycles, that it increases the value of the abstraction layer.
So how about if we put hardware and placement awareness?
I think just focusing on hardware here is a good move, because I think that is something that is really unique to the edge, is that the hardware is heterogeneous while the cloud is standardized, homogeneous, abstracted from the user. The edge is varied, old, and you have to be more familiar with it. And I think that is something to call out, even if the application developer is not usually that aware of what or needs to be that aware of the hardware they're using. That might be, it is something more unique to the edge.
How about if I just summarize that in?
Okay.
And instead of placement, we just say hardware awareness.
Mm-hmm. Now, the caveat I'll say here is people who read hardware awareness, maybe this isn't a bad thing, but I think they'll often walk into the scenario of what the attached hardware IO is. You know, in other words, that's another reason for hardware awareness, in that some of these edge things have dedicated interfaces to particular IO sensors and what have you, that you don't commonly find in a public cloud.
Yeah. Yeah. How about this? Why?
That wasn't the original intention of what this row was for, but if you leave the title as hardware awareness, I think people will naturally assume that that's a part of this. And maybe that's perfectly valid that it is a part of this.
Okay, I added the word and interfaces.
Okay.
Looks okay?
What do you
Everybody
mean
okay
by
with it?
requires greater abstraction? Like, is that saying you need to do that work yourself? Because I think the previous comment there was that there is less abstraction. So maybe saying have to handle the lower level of abstraction.
Or greater. So what is the point, that the platform has to provide greater platform abstraction?
Well, I'd say there's greater value in an abstraction if you can get it, but in some cases you can't even get it.
Yeah, that's why I think just talking about the hardware here could be helpful, but but awareness brings the app into the picture, which I think is important given that we're focusing on apps, but it does make this a little trickier to word.
How about developers need to be aware of wider variety of hardware and interfaces? That's it.
Okay. Yeah, that way it's wide open to what. All right.
Are we taking security out of this discussion?
I put security here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this last sentence, I put the whole thing here. Except networking, because networking is its own dedicated row. So I captured storage, security, hardware.
Well, there is a
platform.
line there that says mobile network and or security awareness. So maybe does mobile network come out of that?
So this I added because in MEC, the application can query a whole bunch of 5G attributes. Or we can make it more generic by saying access network.
Is that so? You added interfaces down at below. Is that different from an interface?
I think it's, yeah, it includes interface includes.
Okay.
And actually mobile, radio waves, it's all listed here as well. So networking is included, storage, making, instead of hardware platform, should we just say compute, comma, storage? A little bit more specific.
I was okay with hardware platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm okay with it the way it is now for this role. It's good. We got 10 minutes left, but we might actually finish the table and then get on so that Dion can talk about what his part was.
So this is just, I just did wordsmithing.
Looks good to me.
This is a very small search. I mean, okay, now we get to the last table, edge native principles.
Mm-hmm.
So resource aware, I was proposing, is there a way to merge it? And Kate is saying, let's keep them separate. Yeah, I think let's keep them separate. There's no need to merge them.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. So applications are portable and reusable within limits. So from the discussion we just had above, I put in hardware platform security, mobile network, and other awareness. You guys okay with this?
I'm okay.
So this one, couple of the projects we are working on, MCO and Nefio, there's this concept of pull mechanism where the edge is pulling configuration as opposed to a centralized site pushing configuration. And that helps with scale, but it also helps with network connectivity issues. So if the edge is pulling, then whenever the network is available, it can pull it. So I wasn't sure it goes here, but
if you can't think of any other, I don't have any objection to it. And if you can't figure out another home.
I like this because you're explicitly pointing out how developers should change their application to respond to the intermittent connectivity and making it more a pool application. I think it's good.
Yeah. I don't think we need to make it any bigger, but I've heard people who have the attitude too that poll is actually even a security attribute.
yes,
In that you can more safely do a poll than a, you know, if something from outside can push, maybe hackers from outside can push too. So you might sleep better at night with a poll mechanism. But I'm not contending we need to make this any bigger.
agreed. I think Chick-fil-A made that point a few years ago. They don't push ever because of security.
But yeah, the cell looks good to me now. The example of the machine learning app, I don't have any objection to it. Although what somebody says to move it to the one above.
I think that was when we were thinking about having a paragraph about each principle. I think we might not be having that anymore. And so I was going to say, if we have a paragraph, then move it to that. But if we're not, then we can just keep it where it is.
I think the table structures, I'm good with it. I don't think.
Well, we haven't gotten to the paragraphs yet, so we can go move stuff out of here when we have those, right? So
I guess I wasn't sure whether we were going to have paragraphs, whether we were just going to keep it as a table or not, or elaborate anywhere.
I thought we said we were, but just in case we don't, let's leave it here for now.
Okay, so I'll resolve this comment.
All right.
Then this is centrally observable. So Kate, your comment from September 7th.
These are just notes from when we were brainstorming this. I think they could be good to keep just to look at for if we do break this into a paragraph.
Okay, so I'll keep it for now then. Then I thought the new name is okay. I think someone proposed a new name, Infrastructure and Platform Management at Scale. I think that's okay. And then again, these were fragments of thought, collective thought. So I tried to make sentences out of them.
Yeah, looks good to me.
Yeah, I think there could be more wordsmithing. I think some things could be a little bit clearer, but maybe it's okay for now.
Do it in another class.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay, let me accept for now. We can try to improve more. Then this one also someone proposed, instead of declarative orchestration, application management at scale. I thought that was a good suggestion. And again, there were a lot of comments and thoughts that I tried to
I'm good.
capture.
You know, the once again, the two scales of, you know, approaching it from the platform level and the number of nodes, and then the application level, I think merits separate coverage. So looks good.
So I'll accept this. You guys want to quickly read this? Looks okay.
Yeah, we're really reaching time here, and I want to make sure Dion, since he can't make every meeting, that he has trouble.
Okay, then let's.
You want to
let's
postpone this and cover it at the next one, and
We will,
help to let him have a shot.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't have much. It's just that I tried. So Amar put it in the row in the table. It was a paragraph down there. So what I try to do is basically to sum up discussions we had last week about interacting with the external resources and devices. So maybe it'd be good until the next meeting if you guys, can go through it, review it, maybe put some comments, and we can discuss both offline and then in person next week.
Okay, so this is the section that Amar is sharing with us now. Then the one on device connectivity.
So you want comments on the content of this outline?
Yeah.
It might be, and this is going to be switched to paragraph form for that definition or for a broader section.
Well, I edit as a like outline for the paragraph.
Okay, so you intend us to take what's in this cell and write paragraphs of text outside the table on these subjects?
Well, it was there, so Amar put
Okay.
it in the table. I'm not sure, but let's focus on the content now.
Okay.
Is anything is missing from this for this topic, or is it too much, and things like that, and then we can discuss in what form this should go next.
Okay. Yeah, some of this, I mean, we need material on the external device connectivity, but I see here like that first bullet, one of the goals of edge computing is to bring compute closer to the source of data. I think we covered that already way at the top. So some of this material looks outside the scope of device connectivity to me. But yeah, offline, I can take some time going over this. And
yeah, this was just the intro to the next next bullet point, which is really the key. But you're right. I mean, it was just an outline for material for these kind of sections because we didn't have any. So
all right,
feel free to propose any changes. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take a look at it. I'm not going to be able to do it during the meeting, but yeah, already I think maybe some of this, when we talk about adding text paragraphs below this table, it's looking to me like some of this would be good for that kind of content.
Yeah.
So on that note, we're over, but I think it might be nice to like delegate. Are we only going to be writing paragraphs about the principles since this is that paper? And if so, do we want to just divide up who's writing what paragraph? So like clearly Dagon's writing the external device connectivity paragraph, but do we want to each take a paragraph and before the next meeting, just put a paragraph down about it or elaborate?
That sounds like a good plan. Now, one of the things that's come, I think we mentioned a few times, and I see some of it in this cell, is trying to come up with a list of specific projects and whether we want that in this paper or not.
So I think we have a separation. So these are principles independent of projects. And then we have a list of CNCF LF Edge related projects and initiatives. I like the separation. So.
Okay, well, some of what is in this cell now actually is projects too, but let's cut and paste those to put them in the spot they belong then. And we'll do it offline.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, well, I think we made good progress. It's 3 minutes after the hour. So let's call this week's meeting to a close, and but we're giving the presentation at KubeCon, which is now about a month away. So we've got to keep moving forward to be ready in time, because somehow the paper has to be done and then a deck composed about it too. So thanks everybody for showing up. I think we're moving forward, but we need to keep up the pace, and we'll see you at the meeting next week. Bye.
Sure. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.